ESPN Radio 1080, The Team.
ESPN1080.com's Round 3 here. Eric Lopez here alongside Carson Ingle and our MMA guru, Brian Wininger. This is the show that gives you all the information on UFC and mixed martial arts. And gentlemen, good to have you all back.
What's up? It's been a great day, huh, guys?
It's been
How you doing,
going.
Carson?
It's been progressing, and we're finally getting it together, I think.
It is. A great show coming up here for everyone here. We are going to recap UFC 134 from Rio, some interesting matches and decisions, and we'll kind of break it down for you. Plus, Rampage Jackson, Spygate in UFC? Can it be? We'll discuss later on the show. Of course, you guys can reach out to us. Brian, can you tell our fans where they can tune in, check you out, and email you?
Reach me on Twitter at ESPNDub. Follow me.
I was kind of wondering about that. Like, is there any significance to that Twitter handle?
Actually, I made it for SoundCloud one time, and I just thought I'd run with it. Whether that's a good idea or not.
And run with it you did, Brian Wininger.
Hey,
so that's where you can hit up Brian for any questions. Of course, you can check us out on YouTube and on ESPN1080.com every week, as we'll get you MMA news. And let's start it off, guys. Of course, UFC 134, the main in Rio. In the card headline, of course, by Anderson Silva, the legend, against Yushin Okami. And Mr. Silva, Wininger, does it again. Okami looked pretty good in that first 2 minutes of that first round. You know, you had him pressed up against the fence there. You thought maybe he had some chances there. But then it seemed like Silva just turned it on to a different level, and then it was no match.
Well, yeah. It's kind of gets silly with Silva. I mean, you see him in the second round. He starts pulling his hands down and just sort of mocking and taunting Okami. And you get the feeling that if he really wanted to finish fights in the first 30 seconds, that he could easily do so, but he just chooses to kind of toy with it for a while. And that's kind of an annoying thing, but also just sort of, just shows his true dominance and what he can do in the octagon.
No, he's a true showman.
Yeah.
He makes his opponents look absolutely outmatched. Everyone was thinking the only way Okami was going to beat Silva was to use the Chael Sonnen approach and take him down, ground and pound, and really use his physical wrestling dominance against Silva. And you're right, for about a third of that first round, he had Silva pinned up against the cage, and you thought he might take it down, but there was just no takedowns going on at all. And, Silva just had his way with him all night.
A tremendous performance for Silva, and of course, many of the national media outlets following the fight began asking the questions. Is Anderson Silva the greatest of all time? Where does he rank? Brian, what's your thoughts?
I think it's hands down. I think he's
really?
I think he is
no debate.
No debate. He's the best fighter of all time.
Dana White, is someone that's kind of in Brian's side, so that's a pretty good person to have backing you on that opinion. But, this is a guy we got to remember how not that far removed he is from basically almost losing to Chael Sonnen and just pulling off a miracle submission in the final minutes of that fight. For me, the guy right now that's even better than him is Georges St. Pierre.
No.
And I think he's a better all-around talent. I think he can do more. I think he can stand up. He's obviously a great wrestler. He's got more disciplines under his belt. And I love Silva, but I think that he almost, because of the way that he fights, I just can't say that he's the greatest of all time, although, certainly he's one of the greatest of all time.
You can't use that match against Chael Sonnen against Anderson Silva. Yeah, he got dominated, but to show what kind of great fighter he is, he pulled out that win with 30 seconds left or something like that in the last round. It was amazing. Georges St. Pierre, you got to remember, 4 years ago, got knocked out by Matt Serra. Okay, if Georges St. Pierre didn't have that under his belt, yeah, you could make an argument. But I think with Anderson Silva, 14 wins in the UFC.
We're talking,
4
years ago,
title defenses.
He lost, on an illegal kick to Yushin Okami. So, we could go back and these guys are going to get losses down the line, but
I think where the debate ends with Anderson Silva and Georges St. Pierre is the way they finish fights. GSP is a great fighter and he dominates people, but he puts them through the mill. He grinds a decision out for him. Anderson Silva finishes fights and just in spectacular fashion. That thing what he did against Forrest Griffin gave me the chills, and then that face kick against Vitor Belfort. Who does that?
Right. Well, we'll get into St. Pierre. A possible Silva St. Pierre has been speculated. Give me your top five, Brian, all time. Give me your top five all time. You've got Silva number one, obviously. Who else?
Yeah, I got Silva 1, I got GSP 2, Couture.
See, that's my guy, Couture. I'm a little biased. I like the story. I like the background with Couture, but you feel Silva's better than Couture.
Oh, yes. I just because of Silva hasn't lost in the UFC.
And I will say this. I think in the next 10, 15 years, we'll be talking about a complete new set of guys in this because of the way that guys, like you look at a John Jones and how much different he is than the fighters that fought in the early UFC and how different, and now guys that are specifically training and sort of grooming themselves to say, hey, I want to be a UFC fighter one day. I don't want to go and be a wrestler, or I don't want to go and be a boxer. I don't want to go and play some other sport. I want to be a UFC fighter. So we're going to start to see that age and generation of guys, and I think guys like John Jones, they're going to come up behind him, are going to just amaze us and wow us with the scope and just really the breadth of their abilities and their martial arts talents.
A guy like John Jones that you bring up, he just turned 24 years old. World champion in arguably the best weight division, and he's training at Greg Jackson's camp. He's got the best fighters around him. He's a great athlete. He's got the biggest reach in the UFC. He's a great wrestler, so he's a guy, down the road.
I think that we're going to see fighters like him in the future. Yep. I think all the fighters are going to be like him in the future, to where they're not going to just, specialize in one area of the sport. They're going to be well-rounded mixed martial artists.
Right.
And I think that's something that we haven't seen consistently in, the first period or era, if you will, of the UFC.
Are we living in the moment, though? It seems like you're kind of taking away from the guys before, the Chuck Liddells and all those guys.
Because their competition just wasn't the same, Eric. I mean, you're fighting guys, especially, the higher the weight class, I think the less skilled guys that you had in the early days of the UFC. We're talking about guys like Tank Abbott running around.
Right.
So it just wasn't structured and didn't have the athletes that are starting to come into the sport now.
No, he's exactly right.
I had him on the floor.
No, I saw Lopez hit the floor. My mind went elsewhere. But to your point, I think we do have to live in the moment with this sport. It's a brand new sport. It's not like the NFL.
All right, so let me put it this way.
I think it's changed so much, so drastically.
Well, obviously, it's better
years.
athletes now. They're more trained. It's obviously more experience. So how would you classify the guys that came before them, that kind of started this thing? How would you rank them, though? Because, you could say that in any sport. The guy's baseball player can hit the ball better now than he did 30 years ago. A boxer, etc. Basketball players, they jump higher. They're more athletic. So you could say that about every sport.
Right.
How do you then rank, the Chuck Liddells and the Tito Ortizes of the world?
I just think, the way I would rank guys in football, I just take it into that perspective. Like Chuck Liddell, I rank him as one of the top fighters of all time, just for what he did for the sport, just on the marketing wise, and he was a dominant knockout champion in the light heavyweight division, and he grew with that first initial burst of the UFC back in 05, 06.
Yeah, they're their due, if you will, as pioneers, as legends of the sport. Guys like Dan Severn, the Shamrocks, Royce Gracie. These are the guys that do deserve their due. I'm not sure that I would try to compare them with the guys that are coming up and that are going to be populating the league in 10 years, but certainly a lot is owed to them, because without them, this sport wouldn't have grown and wouldn't have gained in the popularity and at the place that it is now.
No, you're exactly right. Those guys will never be forgotten, and you're right. They'll go down as not the greatest fighters of all time, but arguably the most influential fighters of all, pioneers. Yeah. So I don't think you can judge them the same way, but yeah, you're right.
It's very interesting. Of course, we encourage our audience to throw in their comments, see who they think is the best of all time. All right, quick. We mentioned St. Pierre and Anderson Silva. Speculation. Can it happen? Can those two go at it, be the next fight? There were some questions afterwards. Can that happen? Is it logical? Your thoughts on that? What's next for Anderson Silva?
Well, Anderson Silva, I'm pretty sure that he's going to face the winner of Brian Stan and Chael Sonnen. That makes the most sense. As far as George St. Pierre and Anderson Silva, that's not going to happen.
Never.
I
agree.
Because, George St. Pierre is going to fight Nick Diaz, which is so much better than Anderson Silva, George St. Pierre, in my opinion.
I don't think the UFC and Dana White wants them to fight. I think they want them to continue to go along in their weight classes and build their brands as the number one guys in those classes.
And to your point, there's so many new developing fighters now, where Dana White's always said, if you're going to move up weight classes, or these champions are going to move up, he wants these weight divisions cleared out. But nowadays there's all these new superstars re-emerging and contending and getting these huge wins. So it's hard for that to happen. And I just think it's perfect. If Anderson Silva wants to dominate the middleweight division, that's great. George St. Pierre is going to pick apart the welterweight division. That's great. But GSP against Nick Diaz, I'm telling you, that fight right
But
there.
I'll counter this. You put those two guys together, not necessarily next fight. I agree. With maybe wait a year or two.
Sure.
I think you could get a couple million buys and pay-per-views for that easily.
Well, and if you have that at Dallas Cowboys Stadium,
over 100,000. That's a lot of money to pass up.
No, I think, it would make sense. But this thing is so evolving. It's like the UFC is like a living organism.
It's never been Dana White's motto to just easily sell out for the quick cash, the quick buy. He's looking down the line, the long-term thing, and I don't think he wants these two guys squaring off just for the betterment of both of their weight classes and for them as fighters in their sort of context and the way they're viewed.
Should be interesting. Quick word before we go to break, Brian. Yushin Okami. What's next for him, obviously, after this tough defeat?
I wouldn't be surprised if he gets matched up with a guy like Chris Levin or something. You got to remember, he was riding a little win streak there.
Yeah.
So, in a loss to Anderson Silva, yeah, he got dominated, but if these guys just tip his hat and just hit the grind and just string a couple more wins together, it's going to be hard with a performance like that in a title fight. It's so hard to get back.
Yeah.
If you don't make it a good fight, you just get beat down. You gotta look at John Fitch. He hasn't had a title fight in forever because of just the way he fights.
Should be interesting to see what happens with him. And all right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll go through the rest of the card at UFC 134, including a preliminary fight that one fighter thought was over, but the ref said no, it's not over. And then later, we'll have Jones, Rampage, Spygate, and UFC. That and more. You're listening to Round 3 here on ESPN 1080, The Team.
ESPN Radio 1080, The Team.
Welcome back to ESPN1080.com's Round 3, your show for UFC and MMA news. I'm Eric Lopez alongside Carson Ingle, and then, of course, our MMA guru, Brian Wininger. And, Brian, once again, tell our MMA fans where they can reach out to you if they got any questions or comments about the show.
Yeah, follow me on Twitter. That's what we're doing nowadays. At ESPN Dub.
Absolutely. And, of course,
Carson. Follow Carson.
Everybody always follows.
Follow me if you want to.
Yeah, I knew you wanted to give out his plug.
I am Eric Lopez Elo.
There you go.
On Twitter there. But we encourage Wininger.
Shameless.
You're the expert there. Of course, we had some comments from last week's show, Brian. We addressed on YouTube, so we appreciated that from the fans who tuning in. Some corrections, which is okay. It's like, it happens. It's rookie error.
Hey, I don't know everything. I'm not claiming that.
Your picks clearly a little off this week.
Yeah, it was a rough card to bet on.
Well, let's get into it. Let's get to the rest of the card. What jumped out to you, Brian? Obviously, other than the Silva fight, which we covered in the last segment, the rest of the card, what jumped out to you?
Shogun's performance, dominance against Forrest Griffin. That was one of those fights where I picked Forrest, but that's one of those fights. Those two guys are so hard to predict. You don't know what guy you're going to get. And just the fashion that Shogun just dominated him, it looked like Rashad when he finished Griffin for the belt. That's how it ended, but it ended in the first round with Shogun, with him just hammer fisting down on Griffin. That stood out to me. Shogun, he looks good, and you're only as good as your last fight in this game.
Big win for Shogun there. Carson, which one stood out to you?
I was shocked in the manner in which that Big Nog won his fight in the first round over Brendan Schaub, just taking him out, standing up. I thought if Nogueira was going to win that fight, he was going to win it on the ground. And now I think that we can fully put to rest, at least for now, that Brendan Schaub may be an up-and-comer in that heavyweight division. I think right now his career is sort of on hold, and it's kind of a wait-and-see with him now. He's not on that fast track, that trajectory towards eventually maybe getting a title shot down the line. Now that Nogueira kind of stopped him there, and I guess we really shouldn't have kidded ourselves anyway, seeing as that he did lose to Roy Nelson in the Ultimate Fighter finale. So a guy that loses to Roy Nelson,
yeah, but Roy Nelson's formidable.
No.
Yeah, I think so.
No,
but he had a good little win streak in him.
Yeah,
but like you were saying, how Nog didn't take him to the down. None of these fights went to the ground.
Yeah, that was unusual. It was. And most of them were quick finishes, except for the Pearson Barboza fight that went to decision. But it was a strange card, I think, in that aspect. And you mentioned it to me, how ironic, of course, it being in Brazil. And them all being basically stand-up fights.
But I think that comments to the progression of the sport. Just because of a practice, flourishes in one nation. These guys are so well-rounded and great at everything now because you have to be. That these Brazilians are one of the top strikers in the UFC. All these guys.
Well, let's get into each of the fight quick here. Obviously, you start with Shogun's win over Griffin. Knocked him out 153 in the round one. Beat Griffin to the punch, I thought, every time. Was quicker. Here's my thought. And you might people are going to get hate mail for me this. I have always felt Forrest Griffin's overrated. All right, his win over Shogun was when Shogun was hurt. He beat Rampage when Rampage was completely out of shape. I am not completely sold Forrest Griffin as anything great. I didn't like his demeanor on the fight on Saturday. It's a big win for Shogun, but I think to me anyway, it speaks more. I don't think Forrest Griffin is. I think he's a little overrated. You buy or sell?
No, I think that's safe to say. Forrest Griffin's going to be one of those guys that are just the middle of the road, string a couple wins together. But his days of winning that light heavyweight title are clearly behind him.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like pretty much, and he's not that old of a guy. He's 32, but right now his career sort of doesn't have any fire to it, any fuel in it, and I guess right now maybe there's a possibility you could see him and Tito Ortiz link up for a fight. The two big names to put together on a card.
So that could be next for Griffin, a match with Ortiz there?
Well, that'd be their third.
Right, exactly, and they've each won one of those, so...
You buy into that one, Brian? Would you say I think that sells? Would the audience buy that?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, it wouldn't be a main. It could be a co-main. But yeah, no, I think that gets paid. Completes the trilogy. That gets buys.
What about Shogun? Where did you go from here with after this win?
Shogun, I think he's right up in there in the mix. He's with those guys. Depends on what Rashad's gonna do. It just all depends. There's a lot of things that have to happen with the John Jones fight and Rampage. So
yeah, I think maybe a few more fights in between that he's got to win to get that shot at the title, but he's back on that path.
Yeah.
Now, as far as Nogueira and Schaub, a lot of speculation. This would be Nogueira's last fight if he lost it. 10 pounds overweight coming into this. People are thinking, hey, he's done. He took it, though. Schaub brought it, though, in the first 2 minutes, Carson. You're very hard on Schaub. He did bring it the first 2 minutes of that fight. Nogueira took the punches. The big question out of this fight is, though, and this is to Carson's point, Brian, is Schaub's chin. Is that a question mark now moving forward?
Well, we know Nogueira's chin isn't.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, Schaub, a guy like Minotauro Nogueira, if he hits you in the chin, I don't care who you are, you're going to be going down. Schaub is young in his career. So you really don't have to worry about that knockout, getting just worn out. But at this point, it is suspect. I think that's safe to say.
Is this a big blow for the UFC? I mean, Carson alluded to it. Schaub was hyped, promoted big time, young.
I mean, there's a lot of guys in the heavyweight division, so I don't necessarily think. And he wasn't, 1A or 1B. I mean, you've got guys that he would have to go past, and I mean. Challenging Cain Velasquez right now, chief and principally, will be Junior Dos Santos, and then you still got Brock Lesnar coming back. I mean, so the heavyweight division's very strong. He's just a guy, if he continued winning, that could have popped himself in there to get a title shot down the road. But now that's sort of backtracked a little bit. Yeah,
and I think you can argue that Minotauro Nogueira, if he can string on a couple more wins, that's more beneficial for the UFC in the long run. Because Schaub, I don't think many people were projecting Schaub to be the next great champion. You know what I mean? But a guy like Nogueira, previous champion and big name in the sport, if he can somehow become relevant somewhat again, then I think that's better for the UFC.
If Nogueira gave you a phone call today and said, Brian, what should I do next? What do you tell him?
It's a pretty funny imagery, first off.
Right.
Yeah, but continue.
Well, I think what he should do is just enjoy this win. He got knockout of the night bonus. He got paid. Relax. Just wait for the UFC to present a fight.
Yeah. Now, Carson, a fight you were very close attention to. Ross Pearson in a tight fight against Barbosa. Split decision. 1-point decisions. 29-28 on all three cards. It goes Barbosa's way. Did you agree with the decision?
I don't think it was a terrible decision. I think maybe if the fight was out of Brazil and Barbosa wasn't undefeated, maybe there's a different result there. But it was very close. I thought that clearly, Pearson, they split the first 2 rounds. And then round 3, to me, was so hard to tell which one prevailed in that. So I don't think it was an awful decision. obviously, my company, IC Places, sponsored Ross Pearson, so...
Were you just going crazy during the fight?
I was. It was ridiculous. People were very curious.
People were like, who is this guy?
Yeah, we're watching it at Frankenstein's.
Why does he like Ross Pearson so much?
Yeah, in downtown Orlando, and people were just kind of confused by that, but...
Pearson came out and threw. Like, he was quick.
It was a great fight. Of course, got Fight of the Night honors, I believe.
Yep.
It's interesting. Obviously, this Barboza is going to be a huge commodity now at 9-0. He continues to build his resume, and I think that was something that might have factored in. You never want to leave fights up to the judges.
Never.
Dana White says that.
Yeah.
Brian, you alluded to that last week. We talked about it. Brazil, home field possibly. You got the judges, like Carson alluded to it. Barboza could be a big star. Did any of that play a role, or did you agree with the decision?
I mean, you never know. They're humans. There's 3 human beings right there judging the fight. So you never know. And people have to remember, too, that you don't know that the UFC has no control over the judges. It's a third party. It's the Athletic Commission. So, it is regulated. You'd like to think it was fair, but subconsciously... in Brazil, I don't know.
You got question marks then too, don't you? You're not completely sold Barboza won this fight.
No,
Wow.
And I thought Ross Pearson. I mean, you know what? I'm okay with the decision. I've seen a lot worse. But I think going into the fight, I thought Barboza physically was going to overmatch Pearson, but Pearson came out and just handled it. So I mean, it shocked me. Pearson looked great.
Had some great leg kicks there.
Yeah, great leg kicks, and I mean, Barboza.
Both of them did. I mean, we knew that Barboza was great.
Well, and Pearson's stand-up, his strikes, his combinations were just so quick.
Could we see a rematch between these two, or do you think go different directions? What do we do with these two?
Nah, they're going different directions.
Yeah, I saw that actually on Ross's Twitter wanting a rematch, but
no.
When there's two fighters this young in their careers, I mean, you see rematches for more veteran guys that have fought a ton of times in the UFC and don't really have any other place to go. But both of these guys, I mean, they're gonna throw them against different.
And
fighters.
You have to, when you're gonna have a rematch, unless it's a guy like BJ Penn or George St. Pierre or like huge name guys, which Pearson and Barboza aren't yet, if they're gonna be at all. And so you're gonna get a rematch if it's a title fight and if it's a close fight. So a regular fight, you know what I mean, like the third fight on the card.
Sure.
I don't think I
But both guys are headed for positive things.
Sure,
right? I don't think this loss hurts Pearson at all.
No,
not really. I mean, obviously he would have liked to win.
Sure.
Winning puts him in a better position, but both guys in that lightweight division, which is gaining popularity with the WEC merging into the UFC and sort of bringing light to the smaller weight classes. I think both fighters do have a positive future in the organization, and certainly with winning Fight of the Night, Dana White and co. were happy with the competition of both guys.
Right. Yes, of course, Nedkoff defeated Luis Kane with a TKO, 4-13 into round one. I thought Kane was pretty obvious. He just wanted to throw left crosses and got paid for it.
And this is a guy that I was really impressed with. We knew so little about him in Stanislav Nedkov, and now 12-0 in his MMA career, and he comes in and just dominates a UFC veteran in Luis Kane. So not like Kane is the most amazing fighter out of there, but it was a great start in the UFC for the Bulgarian.
Yeah, and Kane's a guy who really started his UFC career hot. Like he was a can't miss guy, and he's had a couple losses here, and then of course this fight. I don't know where Kane goes from here.
He's in trouble, isn't he?
He's in trouble.
Pretty bad.
Sure, and
probably the biggest loser of the card. Would you say? I mean, he's going to probably plummet it.
Oh yeah.
Well, I think Forrest Griffin was probably the biggest loser of the card, but I mean,
if he wasn't
still be
Forrest
in the
Griffin.
UFC. Luis Kane may be. Sort of on the brink of getting cut, really.
So you got to remember with Forrest Griffin, though, he's Dana's golden boy.
Right.
So he's always good.
Who is the biggest winner of the card other than Silva?
Wow. Other than Silva, I'd have to say Shogun.
Yeah.
I'd have to say a dominating knockout of Forrest Griffin, and just coming back from that John Jones beating. You know what I mean? So it's just. I think if anybody had so much to gain, it's Shogun, because he quieted the doubters out there.
Quick word, of course. Let's go to the prelims before we go to break. My favorite fight of the night, all right, with all due respect to Ross Pearson, Barboza, was an enjoyable fight. I enjoyed the Dan Miller Tokinho fight. Is that how they pronounce his nickname?
Takiara?
Yeah, that was pretty fun. So he
Prelims
free fight on Spike. He drops Dan Miller with a head kick. He followed him up with strikes. Miller's down, and then he's like, "Oh, it's done. I won this fight. I'm celebrating. I'm up on the cage celebrating." Except that he didn't win the fight because referee Herb Dean didn't stop the fight.
No.
What the heck happened, Brian?
Herb Dean is the greatest ref in the game. He knows exactly when not to stop the fight. And I mean, to your point, dude, it was a great preliminary fight.
Best one I've ever seen in all the years I've watched it. That was my favorite fight, Carson. I don't know if you just seen that fight.
The Spike fights were pretty good.
Yeah.
And that's something that speaks, I think, to the depth of the UFC and what they've created and been able to build. Now you've even got these prelim fights, and there's interest and a calling to show them. So they've got the fights that aired on Facebook before the 2 Spike prelims, and then they had those. And it's just, overall, they've done something that no one's done in any sort of form of combat sports history, whereas they've been able to make those undercard fights interesting. I mean, in boxing, no one ever cares about the undercard. That's never been an interest to people. But somehow, some way, the UFC has developed guys that aren't even the biggest names.
Well, a lot of it's because they offer it for free in the prelims. It's very smart, and Dana White Boxing has not figured that out.
At the end of the day, Dana White's a promoter.
Yep.
And he's pretty good. He's a great promoter.
Yeah.
He knows, and he does it for the fans. That's the key that separates him and boxing. Boxing couldn't care less about the fans. It's all about lining their pockets. So I mean, when you got a guy like Dana White who is just in it for the purity of the sport, can't go wrong.
No, you're right. Failed to mention, of course, Thiago Tavares beating Spencer Fisher TKO in the second round. That was the other preliminary fight. Great game plan by Tavares and a solid performance. Big night for the Brazilians, Brian.
Yep, big night. Only Luis Kane was the only Brazilian who lost. So I mean, it was a huge night. They came out. I'd say it's a success. That UFC card was great. Great finishes, great fights. Should be good. So that is our recap of UFC 134 from Rio. Of course, UFC 135 just around the corner, folks. September 24th. We'll get into that later. And of course, the main event of that UFC 135 is making some news this week. Spygate and UFC together. We'll talk about it next. You're listening to Round 3 here on ESPN 1080, The Team.
ESPN Radio 1080, The Team.
And welcome back to ESPN1080.com's Round 3, your show and source for all the UFC and MMA news. Eric Lopez here back with Carson Ingle and Brian Wininger, our MMA guru. And, of course, reminder, you can check out other programming, of course, like ESPN1080.com Insider Show, Sunday mornings, 10 to 11. Myself and Carson, part of that show.
Always fun on Sunday morning.
That's where Brian
Football's
got his start.
Coming up.
Yeah, that's where you got your start, Brian.
Right, hey.
That's where the MMA news came out first.
Exactly. You guys were a pioneering show who really pushed for the sport.
That's right. Big show.
Thank you.
No problem. That's why we're here.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
Wasn't it?
It's inspiring, emotional.
Hey.
That's right. So check it out. Sunday mornings, 10 to 11. We'll recap UCF's home opener against Charleston Southern and all the college football news going on. So you want to check out that out. And, of course, check out ESPN1080.com as many of you are right now with articles, UCF articles all week. That's where this link is. Some of you are watching it. Or if you're listening on YouTube, we're all over the place.
Can I make a comment real quick?
Sure.
You know when you know the sport's going mainstream or tending to go mainstream? There's a Spygate involved.
That's right. Big Spygate. Carson, clue us in.
Yeah, this is kind of an interesting story. I can't say that I'm really surprised, though. Quentin Jackson, Rampage Jackson, claims that there is someone from John Jones's group in spying on his camp. Apparently he got hurt, and somehow the news got back to Joe Silva, the matchmaker, and Joe Silva said that he got it from John Jones's manager. So the Jones camp denying that there's someone in there. This seems like kind of Quentin Rampage Jackson's normal antics and the way that he likes to sort of, he's kind of like a Chad Ochocinco or a Terrell Owens of MMA and the UFC. So this is kind of his, way of being almost. Right.
He does bring up, though, of course, Jones and Rashad used to be former training partners and self-admittedly best friends. This stems back to UFC 114 when Rashad fought Rampage, and Rashad got him up against the cage and hitting him repeatedly.
In the injured knee, which Rampage didn't tell anybody.
Nobody. And he said, in all my years of fighting, I ain't never been punched in the knee before. So, I mean, well, and then so I got back to him, and who knows? I think Rampage is straight honest dude, but the speculation of it, he's promoting a fight, I think.
Rampage, my advice to you, buddy, in your camp, if there's a guy with a hoodie on, get him out.
You're going to be kicking out a lot of guys if you're kicking out everyone with a hoodie on.
Look for one that looks like Bill Belichick. That's all I'm saying. You don't buy into this, though, Carson. You think this is just do you think this is Rampage, the veteran, trying to play mind games with the young Jones?
Well, it's tough to say. I wouldn't be surprised, as goofy and as out there as Rampage Jackson is, it just wouldn't shock me if he was just kind of making this up and throwing it out there.
Well, Kevin Ioli is the man who brought this story.
Your good friend, Brian.
Right, my good buddy. We, this was a conference call. The way Rampage rambles on, I'm sure, he says crazy stuff, and you can pick some things out, make a story about it. It's promotion.
Adds to the hype, of course. September 24th, the big one. UFC 135,
Ioli's bringing it to his front page of Yahoo.
It was the front page this on Tuesday
Good
morning.
Job.
So I have a feeling these two, you're right. Rampage likes to yap. And I think the closer we get to this fight, he's going to keep talking. And could we see these two maybe have a issue before the fight?
No, it'll never get under John Jones' skin.
You think he'll play it cool?
Yes, he totally will.
I agree. I mean, we don't really see that kind of stuff happen in the UFC
He'll fight crime before the
so.
fight, too. This guy is just, exactly. That's a good point. These guys are the most well-mannered athletes, percentage-wise, of any sport, I'd make the argument of. Because they're humble. They're in there, and they don't need to prove anything. So I think Rampage will get crazy. He'll hype himself up, but John Jones won't feed into it.
Also, I mean, Rampage doesn't really have the credibility. I mean, everyone knows he's a clown. John Jones knows he's a clown, and so I really don't see it being.
Rampage has credibility, though. He's got some credibility.
Thank you, Brian.
Former champion, knocks people out.
Yeah, but I'm saying in terms of trying to John Jones isn't going to let this instigate him because he knows the place that Rampage is coming from. Rampage is goofy. Rampage is a character. Rampage is going to say and do. It's like Manny being Manny. Rampage being Rampage.
Yep,
so.
Exactly. But John Jones won't take the bait. Some people take the bait. Wanderlei Silva took the bait, and he got knocked out.
Right. That's going to be interesting with Jones. See how he deals with it.
Jones won't get knocked. Jones is going to dominate him.
And Carson does not give any validity to this. Do you?
No, I never said that. I just.
You think it's more than Rampage being.
If I had to put money on it, I would probably say that Jackson's fabricating it, but it could. I mean, of course, it could be true.
Right? Yeah, there could be someone in there, but this could be true. But I would just make people aware that don't link it to John Jones directly. You know what I mean? It's kind of like John Jones against Rampage, but it could be someone in that camp. Some lower end guy on the camp's talking. Everyone, people are talking to people.
Do you think this happens anywhere as far as mixed martial arts?
It happens in our work.
Close-knit community.
Right.
So guys have, I'm sure there
People
are guys
talk.
in Rampage's camp that have some sort of relationship with the Jones camp, and something might have traded hands in terms of information.
But on paper and on the opening page of Yahoo, you would think John Jones is planting. Jackson's camp is doing. It's not like that. At the end of the day, you got to square off and you got to get in that octagon. So
right, that's we'll see how that plays out. It'll be.
I'm stoked for that fight.
Yeah, I know you're fired up for it. You got the clock running.
That fight, and I'm telling you, GSP Nick Diaz. I just put my fist to the.
Yeah, you did.
He's emphatic. He wants everyone to know. Passionate. Always.
Are you as passionate as Brian is about it?
No, but I mean, it's a good fight.
Yeah. He will be.
He will be. Of course, for the audience that may not know, is
in October.
October. Thank you, Carson.
29th, October 29th.
Quick thing before we forget, and we mentioned the broadcast. No Joe Rogan in Rio. I know, Brian, that bothered you.
That bothered me. Kenny Florian, man, it couldn't match. It was amazing to see how much that broadcast suffered without Rogan, because Rogan he paints a picture for you. He tells you what the guys are doing, how to escape it. It feels like, when you're watching the fight, what a Kimura is and how to escape it when you've never rolled before and never, been put in those situations. I think Rogan is he's so on point, and he knows about the sport, and he's hilarious at the same time.
Yeah, I think more than anything, it's the entertainment value that Rogan adds to the sport. Just being the fact that
Just so candid.
Florian is a UFC fighter. He probably brings more of a credible name to the broadcast, but I mean, Rogan has trained in this. He knows what he's talking about, and he brings that excitement factor to it. Fans are familiar with him, and so they know when Joe Rogan's there and when he's getting passionate, it's important.
He's a perfect color guy. I mean, the guy's a stand-up comedian. You know,
right.
Fear
Now,
Factor.
For those that didn't know, he was not there. You told me this, Brian. He's shooting Fear Factor.
Fear Factor,
now,
yes.
Now, Carson, you work IC Places. You cover entertainment, movies as there as well. My question, why is Fear Factor coming back? Can that work? I mean,
Fear Factor's kind of cool.
I'm sure.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of shows come back.
If you're Dana White, you're okay with just letting him do that? I mean, I guess since he started there.
He probably makes a lot of money. That's network television.
No, I guarantee he makes a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I mean, Dana White, he's all about that. Rogan's been his boy for so long. But
how many? We don't expect this to.
No, it was a
No.
simple scheduling conflict. I mean, they're taping episodes right now. Fear Factor will probably be done taping, by the end of the month here, and because I know it's airing, coming back soon. So I don't know exactly.
And who really knows? With Irene going on over the weekend, it was kind of hard to fly in and out and travel. Right. Who knows? It was scheduling conflicts or what had happened, but I wouldn't take it.
Well, obviously, you were not a fan of the work this past weekend. If you had to pick, who would you have sit in for Joe Rogan then? Who would you have picked?
Ooh.
No, I mean, there's nothing wrong with Kenny Florian, though.
Well,
I mean,
Brian disagrees. Look at Brian's not it.
Jay Glazer. Yes.
Well, I think you're going to see a lot of
I
Jay
would love
Glazer
Jay Glazer to fill. He's a guy who knows.
He's just being unrealistic now. He's throwing names against the wall. I mean,
but no, to Brian's point now with Fox with the new deal. I mean, if Rogan sits out, I could see Jay Glazer sitting.
I would love to see Glazer. That's the guy. Glazer's the guy.
For the cards that could we see a possible Gus Johnson, Jay Glazer for some of the smaller cards?
No, they're going to stick with the two guys, no matter how big or small.
And they should.
The event is.
And they should. You got to stick with Goldberg and Rogan.
That was the main reason why they did the deal with Fox, because Fox gave that right up, that production right for the actual fights.
But whether they have Gus Johnson and Glazer in the studio and they throw it down,
we're pretty sure the pregame, postgame is going to involve Gus Johnson and Glazer.
Yeah, see, I can see that, and that'd be great.
So you like Glazer's work?
Yes, I do, and he's another guy who trains and he's in it.
Right.
And I mean, dude, I love him. I love Jay Glazer.
That's not your choice, Carson? Would that be your choice?
I mean, it's kind of. I mean, obviously now that they've made the deal with Fox, it will become a realistic proposition. But in the current state that they were in, that's not really realistic to bring in a guy from the other network. I mean, like that.
Well, let me ask you this, both of you, this: why not? Is there not a former fighter they can bring in, like a Randy Couture, who can do it, or are they just not? They're not equipped to doing it.
They're not there yet because I mean, I know that. I mean, there are guys that do that. Frank Shamrock's been a broadcaster, but we all know the multitude of problems there with him in the MMA community. Hoist Gracie actually did commentary on a fight the night before on HDNet, but I don't really think that he's a guy that's going to really connect with the fan base. And I mean, really, it's current fighters right now. It's Kenny Florian's done work, Stephan Bonner's done some work, Frank Mir on
WBC. Yeah,
those are kind of the guys that you're looking at if they had to put someone in there.
But see, you need a major personality. The way Joe Rogan he's raised that bar in that spot. So you have to really be.
I think Brian's he's like I don't know. It's like he lost his like mother or something. I think it's what he's like comfortable with. I really didn't think Kenny Florian was that bad.
Right. Dude, I thought he was horrible.
Okay.
Wow.
He just doesn't bring anything.
Did you have something wrong with Kenny Florian?
Absolutely not.
Did something happen here in the past?
Not. He is from Boston, though.
Yeah, it's a negative, but so is Dana White. So
right. That's
we can't really
cancel out. But no, it wasn't like he was. It was whatever. But Joe Rogan is just. My whole point is how much you could see the difference.
I think
you could see the difference and hear the difference.
If it was equal and the fan base didn't have an attachment to Rogan, I think they prefer Kenny Florian. I really do.
Out of anybody.
Not out of anybody, but between him and Rogan. I mean, obviously there might be other people that they would like.
Florian's had the most experience at that, so. Well, let's just hope we never have to come to that decision.
There you go. Fair enough.
Touche.
I want my mommy.
Touche. And on that note, we're about to wrap up here. Reminder, we'll be back again next week. Another edition of Round 3. We're working on some guests, possibly. We won't mention who they might be.
We're working the phones.
Yeah.
Working the phones,
Twitter.
the emails. Brian, one more time. Where can they reach you?
At ESPN Dub on Twitter.
Dub. I like that. That's good. Last thoughts, guys, before we wrap it up.
Last thoughts. Great card. Brazilian-Israeli came out and put on a show. Win-win. We got some new news with this Rampage story come out, and I think the MMA, the sport's grown.
Yeah, it was a landmark card, I think, for the UFC, coming on the heels of the announcement about broadcast television. And you are right, the Rio de Janeiro crowd was fantastic, maybe the best crowd they've ever had in person, and they're definitely going back there next year in a much bigger venue. In fact, the Fertittas were over there apparently booking some sort of soccer stadium, 100,000-seater for the next time they go there.
Do you agree with the Brazil audience? Really best one they've had in a while?
That's what Dana said.
It's either that or Quebec. I mean, it's either that or Canada. Yeah, I mean, sure. And you're right. They can fill one of those stadiums. It's whether or not Dana wants to put it there.
They apparently had 350,000 people wanting to buy tickets when they announced the original fights.
I believe in that market.
What's the best U.S. market, if you could pick?
The best U.S. market?
Yeah.
Vegas. And then, you know what? Here in Orlando, pay-per-view buys, on paper, the most on the East Coast.
Top East Coast.
So,
it's gotta happen, right, Carson?
Yeah.
Amway Center. We'll be there if it does.
Dana.
Come to us, buddy. We got a seat saved for you.
He was in Miami before he flew to Rio earlier the week, and
on Levitar's show.
Did some other press down there, and did mention that a fight was coming in Florida, but we've heard that for a while, so we'll see.
We have heard that for a while, and you were up close with Dana White the last time he was in Central Florida.
Fight night in Tampa. I didn't get to go to the fights. I had something that night, but we did go to the weigh-ins the day before, and that's the fan aspect that you brought into it. I mean, that's so encompassing, and everything they do is just so fan-friendly. And
the show, even the weigh-ins, it's a show.
Absolutely. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of ESPN 1080s.com's Round 3. For Brian Wininger, Carson Ingle, I'm Eric Lopez. We'll see you next week for another edition of Round 3.
ESPN Radio 1080, The Team.